and I'm a pet detective. And I'm going to talk tonight kind of a little bit about my background and how I got started in doing this quirky work, and then I'll be talking about some of our cases. But I'm also going to be showing some photographs of physical evidence on lost pet investigations that we've worked. And you're probably thinking, okay, physical evidence and forensics. Yes, we use forensics on our cases. And so I'm hoping you're going to be finding this entertaining and useful. So my background is in law enforcement. I was a police officer, bloodhound handler. I started training search and rescue dogs in 1989. I had a specific interest in training cadaver dogs. In fact, the dog on the left was Rachel, my first cadaver dog. And this was back when cadaver dogs, and I think now they're called human remains detection dogs, where they were just first coming into being, I guess. I had read an article in Dog World magazine in 1989, and I was fascinated. And the pictures were of German Shepherd, German Short-haired Pointer. And my favorite breed was always the Weimaraner. And I said, if a German Short-haired Pointer can do that, a Weimaraner can do that. I'm going to get a Weimaraner and train it to find dead people. You know, my family was nuts. What are you talking about? You know? But I had been involved in law enforcement since I was 13. I was a police explorer scout. I became a 911 dispatcher. This was in Fresno, California, when I was 19. So I had a fascination with law enforcement, but it wasn't until 1989 that I started dabbling in training SAR dogs. But it was in 1991 that I read a book about police bloodhounds and scent evidence, and that just did it for me. That fascinated me so much. I became so enthralled with the concept that scent is evidence. It's present at every crime scene. That when you touch a windowsill or you touch a piece of clothing or what have you. Now we know about contact DNA, but back when I was working and beginning to train bloodhounds, we just knew that it was scent that was being left behind. But that you're leaving your scent there, and that a properly trained bloodhound that's trained in scent discrimination trailing could follow that scent trail. If it's trained to smell that smell and only follow that scent trail, then you have a viable tool to help you recreate crime scenes, not just looking for missing people, and that's oftentimes how law enforcement thinks, especially on the West Coast, in terms of utilizing bloodhounds. But on the East Coast, they use them quite extensively on solving criminal investigations, and that became my thing. So I went to the police academy. So this is 1991. I'm going to get a police bloodhound. I'm going to train to track criminals, and I'm going to become a police bloodhound handler. Well, I didn't know that you don't just, being a female in a kind of a redneck area, say that you're going to be a canine handler, that you're going to tick off a lot of people, but I did. But I got my first bloodhound, AJ, on the left there, and began training him, and became a police officer in a small town outside of Reed, Lee, California, and found that they really didn't want me working there. Not because I wasn't a good cop, but because they didn't want bloodhounds and they didn't want me. And so after working there for a year and a half of just doing my time as a rookie, I went over to Santa Cruz, to the UC Santa Cruz Police Department, and became a police officer, took a police officer job there, and the doors opened for me to get to use my dogs. Within 4 months of my first moving there, I used Rachel on the polyclass search, because she was a cadaver dog. And then within 2 months after that, I used my bloodhound AJ on a missing person case, and he tracked down and found the missing Alzheimer's patient within 20 minutes. So right away, I began having success with my dogs, and I was being paid for my passion, and it was all good. Until in 1996. Now this was a few years. I had moved up there to Santa Cruz in 1993 until one day AJ dug out from my yard and was missing. So suddenly I'm the panicked police officer needing to look for my missing police dog. Now I had used AJ on a lot of cases by that time. He had earned a National Life-Saving Award for saving a man's life who had attempted suicide. He had captured a couple criminals. And so, I mean, I had gone out faithfully every time I got a page to go out in the Santa Cruz Mountains at, 3 or 4 in the morning to tromp around and look for missing people or whatever. And yet, when my dog was lost and I called the sheriff's department in a panic saying, AJ's missing, I need the team to come out and help me look, they're like, sorry, we're only sanctioned to look for people. We can't come out and look for lost pets. And I'm like, really? Actually, it wasn't like that. I was hysterically crying. And so I did what I knew I needed to do to find my missing police dog. I called my friend Jeannie, and I had helped to train her golden retriever, Kaya, to track people. And we worked her dog Kaya and my dog AJ on a lot of cases together. And we knew that Kaya understood smell the pillowcase and follow the scent trail of the missing person, but we didn't know if she would understand smell the stinky dog blanket and find my stinky dog. But she did. She tracked AJ down in 20 minutes and found him. And that was a life-changing moment for me. That was a paradigm shift in my life, because when I got him back in the house and sat down and had a glass of wine, I thought, you know how to train dogs to find people. Why aren't we training dogs to find lost pets? We have all kinds of detection dogs. We have termite detection, drug detection, bomb detection, mold detection. I can go on and on, because the detector dog industry is huge. Why don't we have cat detection dogs? And why aren't we going out and physically searching for people's missing pets? And so I put the idea out there on a chat list or what have you, and then it was search and rescue dog people, right, a national list. And the normally chatty group suddenly went silent. Because I wasn't going to be the one to do it, because by that time I was training up my next bloodhound puppy, the other bloodhound that was in the picture, Chase. I had been grandfathered onto the SWAT team, but there was just kind of a slight problem. AJ was afraid of gunfire. so I needed a gutsy bloodhound, and that was Chase. And so, you know, my gig was dangerous manhunts with bloodhounds. That's the direction I was going, not in searching for lost pets. So, but you know, I just like, I'm going to put this idea out there and see where it goes, and it just went nowhere. And but the interesting thing is the idea haunted me, and I couldn't let it go. For 6 months, it just kept bugging me that somebody needs to do this, somebody needs to do this, somebody needs to do this. And finally, I thought, you know, I just have to try this as an experiment. I want to see if a dog can be trained to find lost pets. Now, by that time, when I had gotten Chase, the bloodhound puppy, and I began really focusing on training up a new bloodhound, I didn't have time for Rachel and her cadaver work. And by then, there were tons of cadaver dogs in Northern California. I mean, not tons, but there was enough. And I thought, you know, so I allowed her to become a couch potato, and I just wasn't working her on cases. So she became the obvious experimental choice. She was 7 years old at that time, and she loved cats. In fact, when I'd be out there like looking for, she was also trained to find guns. We'd be, you know, on a criminal case back when I was using her on cases, we'd be looking for a gun or looking for body parts. She'd be out on a bunny hunt. There's a cat, or there's a skunk. And so it was so easy to train her to find lost pets. I kid you. I spent 3 months. She already knew how to search, and she was already a fully trained search dog, but to transition her over, and in fact in my memoir, The Lost Pet Chronicles, I talk about the first time that I took my cat, Yogi, and put him in a crate and hid him out in the woods, and I took Rachel, I put a tuft of fur under her nose, and she sniffs it, and she looks up at me like, yes! Finally you understand what I've been trying to tell you all along. You know? And in her first 4 searches, she found 2 missing cats and 1 missing dog. And I knew that we were onto something, and the people that we went out and helped were so grateful that somebody cared enough to come out and help them look for the missing pet. But I didn't know what to do with this. I had people tell me, you need to start a business. And I'm like, what's that? and you know, then I had to make that choice of, do I start a nonprofit or do I do this as a business? And just so you know, I've tried both, and I've failed at both several times, but now I have 1 nonprofit now that has stuck for 10 years, and I'll talk more about that in a few. Then that would actually be Missing Pet Partnership. So, you know, my journey began, actually, AJ was lost in 1996. My first attempt at when I trained Rachel was 1997, so between 97 and 2001, I tried to get this idea going, and there was just failure after failure, but those are the things you learn from, right? So I ended up moving back to Fresno, California then from Santa Cruz to take care of my mom who had dementia, and was able to form Missing Pet Partnership, and was able also then to write my memoir, Lost Pet Chronicles. It was published by Bloomsbury in 2004. I wrote the Dog Detectives book, which is a training manual on how to train a dog to find lost pets, and launched a Pet Detective Academy in 2005, and I'll talk more about that because we actually have an academy coming up at the end of June. If any of you think you might want to be a pet detective, keep that in mind. And then we began the focus of, we began shifting away from training for-profit pet detectives, which we've trained about 150 people from the USA, Canada, Italy, Japan, Mexico, and Ireland that are out doing this as a business. Well, there's not all that many that are out there doing it. 150 people took the class, but out of that, there's probably about 20 to 25 people that are attempting to do this full time. And some are charging pretty large fees. And we at Missing Pet Partnership, when we go out on a search with our search dogs, we charge $250. And sometimes we're out there, I mean, my bloodhound AJ has found a missing cat in 8 minutes. Then we've been on cases where we keep repeatedly going back several times. You'll see one case I'll debrief that took us 4 months to catch the cat. In that case, we kind of did it pro bono and didn't even, I think we got $200 from the owner. But we as a nonprofit, there are cases that we take on where we don't charge any fee, but we use it as a learning experience, and we learn, and I blog about it in future stories for a book. So our focus right now with our organization, Missing Pet Partnership, we are a national nonprofit, but we have partnered with a shelter in Kent, with the regional animal, whatever, of King County. The animal shelter that's in Kent. We have a program that we've launched through the animal shelter where we've trained shelter volunteers to coach people that have lost pets, and we want to blueprint that with shelters across the country. And then we partner with animal rescue groups, veterinarians, and people that want to form lost pet search and rescue teams across the country, even other countries, to do the same thing that you'll see that we're doing here in Seattle with using search dogs and responding to search for lost pets. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the science of finding lost pets. There's so much I could speak about, but I want to give you just kind of tidbits of information. Really the foundation of what we teach in our missing animal response or MAR course is very similar to the science of finding lost people. So there has been studies and books out there on what's called the analysis of lost person behavior. I mean, you can have a backpacker, a berry picker, and a deer hunter all can be lost in the same area of the woods, but the tactics, the techniques, and the resources that are used to search for these people, they're all people, but they're out in the woods for different reasons. They behave differently when lost, and they carry different equipment with them. So the way that a search manager, and that's part of the training that I had and what I brought into in the development of MAR, is that knowledge of, we analyze the situation and the behavior of the people and look for them based on that. So I began on looking at the lost pet behaviors. And we discovered that the way that we look for a dog is very different than how we look for an outside access cat that suddenly vanishes from its territory versus what we call the displaced cat, which is the inside only cat. So it only makes sense that the way that we investigate them, or the way that just basically people should be told how to search for them, are very different. And yet you go to the animal shelter or most lost pet websites and they're telling you the same thing. Put an ad in the paper, keep coming back to the shelter, and yet we're telling them you need to know that your cat is likely hiding in silence and that you can use a digital wildlife camera in a feeding station to confirm he's there, and then use a humane trap to catch him and get him back home. Or it's very different with dogs. I'll get just into that a little bit. So how we decide what recovery technique will oftentimes depend on the temperament or the behavior of an individual dog or cat will dictate the strategy. So we kind of look at cats. There's we kind of classify them in 4 areas, and that is from the curious clown, and the curious clown, that's my cat Cheeto there, he was, I don't know if you saw him, he was on Evening Magazine recently, and now he's got this big fat, he's a big fat cat anyway, he's got this big fat pin, he used to have a little pinhead, now his head's growing big. Because next week he won a Pet Hero Award, he's going to Bainbridge Island to get this big award and stuff, so it's like, I'm not proud of my cat. But anyway, he's a clown. He thinks he's a dog. That type of cat, when that cat would escape outside, that would be the type of cat that I would probably put out the neon posters and be knocking door to door and talking and expecting that he's going to travel farther than what we call the catatonic, which is at the other end of the scale, the truly xenophobic, which means a fear of something that's foreign or new. So those cats are the type that when a stranger comes in the house and the cat runs and hides under the bed, those are the type of cats you need a humane trap to catch those ones. Those are the cats that are going to often be very close to the escape point, and they're terrified, and they can go for up to 12 to 14 days without breaking cover, without eating food, without meowing, and I'll tell you about a few cases in a moment where we had those happen. So what I thought you would find interesting, is this is part of what I teach in that Pet Detective Academy, is that the differences, again, between the lost dog, the outdoor access cat, and the displaced cat are there's three mysteries to solve, or investigative questions. With a lost dog, the mystery to solve is who has this dog? So you're looking at the who. So you're doing massive marketing. You probably all saw my car out there. That's one of the cases that we're working right now, a missing dog named Gus in Tacoma. So it's internet-based. We do protests at intersection. It's getting the message out to people because somebody probably has this dog. Unless if it's a skittish dog that's scared and running from people, in that case, there's still going to be witnesses. So you need to find out who's seen this dog and knows where he's hiding, so we can go and set up a feeding station, a camera, and then work on trapping and catching the dog. Then with an outside access cat, it's what has happened to the cat, because we have identified 8 probability categories, and these are on our website, of what happened to the cat. It could have been taken by a predator, it could be sick, injured, or deceased. It could have been rescued. It could have been unintentionally transported by climbing in a car and being taken out of the area. Unless if there's a 9th category, abducted by aliens, one of these 8 things had to have happened to the cat. So it's a matter of analyzing, asking the owner a lot of questions and determining the temperament of the cat, the circumstances, and all that, to try to pin down and come up with a probability of what happened to their cat. Versus the displaced cat, that mystery to solve is where's the cat hiding, because when a cat jumps out the window and they land, they're often not going to go straight ahead because, when there's no cover, like across a lawn. They're going to hug next to the house. They're either going to go to the left or they're going to go to the right, and they're going to look for the first place to hide, under a deck, under a house, in a shed, or somewhere that they can slip into, where they're going to feel safe, because that's their only protective measure from predators, is to hide in silence. And those cats, those indoor-only ones that escape outside, are going to be safer from coyotes and predators than the outside cat that's sitting around in its scent pool, kind of like I always describe a scent pool that is created when a person or anything object that's emanating scent remains stationary, kind of like the cartoon Pigpen. You get this cloud of scent that will build around it. When you have an outside cat that its scent is everywhere, well then if there's a coyote that happens to be a cat eater in the area going there, it's going to pick that up and detect it. So indoor cats that escape outside are less at risk than the other.
I have a question. Maybe you're going to get to this later, but we've been telling people at our adoption process that there's been a lot of coyotes in the Seattle and surrounding areas taking domestic cats, and we've heard from a lot of our adopters looking for cats that that's what they've found has happened. Do you feel like that is true?
I touch on that a little bit more, and then I'll talk with you more later, but that tends to be, there are actually more pets that end up in animal shelters that are actually taken by coyotes. There are definitely coyotes that take cats, and I'll definitely debriefing a couple cases where that happened. But when a dog gets out and escapes, what is the probability that it happened to have run across the path of a cat or of a coyote that's hungry, and that is one that has killed and eaten cats and dogs? Because there are certain coyotes in certain areas that when they're raised on killing cats or killing small dogs, they definitely will. I mean, we see the evidence and we see the cases. But just an example, one of the years when we handled the 450-something cases, out of those only 16 were confirmed killed by coyotes. So it does happen. It does not happen to the extent that people lock on the tunnel vision and they jump to the fear that my cat or dog was eaten by a coyote or my dog was stolen. So we look at the thought patterns of the owners that we work with often influence whether or not they're going to get their animal back. So a lot of there's human behaviors that are involved. We're not only looking at the animal behaviors, but human behaviors. There's also assumptions that when people find a dog, oftentimes when a dog is found wandering, people are thinking, oh, look, it's a homeless dog. Or when they find a dog that's skittish and fearful, you raise your hand and the dog cowers, the assumption is the dog was abused. When in fact, that same behavior in cats, when people see that skittish, fearful behavior, they assume the cat's feral. they see that behavior in dogs, they assume the dog was physically or abused. When in fact there's many dogs that due to genetics and DNA creates a fearful behavior in them, that it could have been that the breeder or whoever whelped them as a puppy dropped something, was wearing a cowboy hat and dropped something when the dog was a puppy, and it associates hats and men with something to be afraid of. And so, but what happens is thinking that these dogs are homeless or abused or dumped, and when people find a dog out in a rural area, the assumption is it was a dumped dog. This oftentimes prevents people from trying to work backwards to find out who lost this dog, because guaranteed if you find a dog, the majority of cases is it's not that it was abandoned, dumped. It could be that it was abused. I mean, not saying that that doesn't happen. There are, especially some worse areas of town and what have you, but you're better off assuming that this dog came from somebody's house. Somebody was feeding this dog and taking care of it and it escaped. And so on our website there's a page called Think Lost, Not Stray. And we just encourage people, if you find a dog, be thinking in terms of it's likely that this dog belongs to somebody who wants the dog back. So I'm going to just say a quick word about search dogs. So we do train and utilize cat detection dogs to find missing cats, and scent tracking dogs to track the scent trail of lost dogs. When we come out with our search dogs, we do charge a fee for that. We do not promote that these are the answer. Unfortunately, when people hear that we have the search dogs, they think and believe that those dogs are going to find their missing pet. And the reality is there's many cases where using the search dog is not appropriate, or really even talk people out of it, or tell them that, we just aren't going to come out with the dog because you don't need to spend $250 for me to come out and look for your cat, when you just told me that your cat is super skittish, and I can tell you that your cat is likely hiding in your backyard and you need a humane trap. And we know that he's got a skittish temperament, and we know he's going to be in the area. So we didn't find him then, but we had volunteers that faithfully went out there 4 times a week putting out food and wildlife cameras. And that was November 4th, and we caught him on camera March 3rd. So this cat was in the same neighborhood. The only reason we got this cat back was because of the faithfulness of these volunteers that did not give up and knew and believed what we trained them, which is he's going to be in the area, he's not going to travel, he's going to be hiding, he's going to be afraid. And they just kept putting food and they had the camera set there, they were feeding. We got tons of cameras of raccoons and all kinds of other cats. But then we caught him on camera, and it's like, is that him? It's like, well, he was supposed to be wearing a blue harness when he escaped, but this cat didn't have a harness. But it's like, it sure looks like the white in the chest. And the more pictures that we looked at, this was the telltale picture for me. This is when I said it's him, because we were able to see this dark tip on the tail and this one ring, and you can see in his tail there. He's got the long, dark tip about this long and then one ring, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's him. So we then went out there, and within, this is the actual, one of the videos. This is, oh, well, okay, never mind. So we actually got him on video, and then within hours, we caught him in the trap. And this is an example of what's called high probability evidence. This is once we found where he had been hiding, and it was a house across the street. This is physical evidence here that we look for when there's a cat, especially an outdoor access cat. But he was a displaced cat, but he was out there for 4 months, or 3 or 4 months. And it's repetitive movement in and out of the area where he's going, because cats are such creatures of habit. When they leave that clumps of cat hair, then it narrows our search area. We know where to be searching for them. And just so you know, where I took this picture was where he escaped. He was actually, we set up our feeding station at the house in this corner. He was living under this house. Wow. But he finally got brave enough to cross the street to come over there for food. And then he was reunited with his owner. We ended up, they did a big story there in the Bay Area, the Half Moon Bay Review. It's a big newspaper thing, but anyway, there was a story on him, and I blogged about it. So it's the blog, if you go on our website, you'll see a picture of him, and then it links to my blog story. It's amazing. This cat Tank was outside the Tukwila Costco for 37 days in the woods where there was confirmed coyotes, and he was never taken by coyotes. He was recovered because of the poster. I'm going to kind of go through these quickly. This cat Ruffles, they had a coyote in their yard. He was missing for 3 days. On the 2nd day, they saw the coyote in their yard, and they were freaking out. So we told them, if you know that you've got coyotes there, put out food. Give him dog food. Go and buy a 10-pound bag of dog food and some big meaty bones, and some big rawhide bones, so that you give the coyote some free food. A coyote is not going to expend energy to try to catch and kill your cat if it's got free food there. They are scavengers, and so just feed him. Give him free food so he'll fill up his belly and take a bone and go away to his den, wherever that is, and leave your cat alone. And they did that, and then we coached them in how to use their house as trap. They put some food and baited Ruffles to come in the house, and then they just slammed the door closed. We do a lot of that where we coach people. This cat, Ginger, we went to this whole massive search. Turns out that she had gone, the dog had chased her into a hole in the wall. Do you know these outlets, how big that is? I know. They're 4 inches by 3 inches, and I know that because we measured it there, and because Ginger had climbed in through one of those and was hiding in the wall. And didn't meow while we were there, but 17 days later, when the owner went and adopted a new kitten and the kitten was mewing, suddenly there's meow. Oh my God. This cat, Norm, we were just featured on Animal Planet on a show called Must Love Cats for my cat, Cheeto, but for him training our cat detection dogs, and one of our cat detection dogs was honored and featured on Animal Planet because it found this missing cat who had escaped with a retractable dog leash. You know what that is? It's a long leash that you should never put a cat on. Well, she didn't know that, and he ran away in fear because this was crashing after him, and he ran under the next door neighbor's hot tub and was wound it around there, was almost strangled to death for 5 days in the heat and never made a sound. And this is one of the things that we teach and instruct people, that a panicked, sick, or injured cat will hide in silence. So her cat, she walked by there many times calling him, and it was our search dog that wagged its tail and said, "There's a kitty under here." So he was right there, right next door, and lived because of that. So some of the lost dog investigations, we captured a dog, Sophie. This is a story that's on our website. We basically built a drop net. It was a skittish dog that wouldn't come to anybody. And we built a drop net with magnets that went to a box that looks like a bomb, but it wasn't a bomb. It had a magnetic, it held the net in place so that when we saw the dog go under the net and at the food that we put there, I called on the radio and said now, and they pulled the wire and it dropped the net on the dog and it didn't catch the dog. But it made a cool video. We ended up catching her a week later. We drugged her and rat packed her. Taboo, this is a case where we did an intersection alert, so we go out and we do lost dog protests. And with getting the information out there that there's an Italian Greyhound that's missing, and this helped to get that dog back home. This case, Otto, this was an example of a dog that was involved in a rollover car accident in Arkansas and was living in the wooded area, and some like 4 months, 8 weeks. He was out there for 8 weeks. You can see how skinny he became because he didn't have any food source out there, but there had been a sighting, so they put food in a camera, caught him on camera, confirmed it was him, and they caught him in a trap. This dog, Mac, is a dog that we captured using a technique called Magnet Dog and Snappy Snare. And I don't have time to show the video, but it is, I did blog about it. But this Snappy Snare is a device that is used, and I just caught a dog, a pit bull the other day with it, that was running away from people, wouldn't come, animal control couldn't catch it. So, but I have a dog that is friendly, that loves dogs, and when she wags it, she'll wag her tail at any dog. And we only use this on dogs that we know are not aggressive, or aggressive towards people or dogs. And so this dog came, Matt came right up to my dog Cody, and when they come up and they're sniffing noses, when you slip this over the neck of the dog, all I have to do is the moment I see that it's over the neck, I release it with my finger, and it becomes an instant leash. It becomes an instant leash, so that you're able to capture the dog. So it's a real cool technique. We just captured a dog named Smell. I think this was on the news just recently. You may have seen that. It was a Iditarod sled dog that was on the run for 6 weeks up in Falls City, and we were able to finally get her to the point where we could give her some drugs, where she calmed down a little, and we were able to grab her in that. And then you saw my car being tagged. We use the Neo markers to mass market lost dogs. Wildlife cameras and nanny cams. So these are some of the tools that we use. The amplified listening device, I have one here if you've never played with it before. There's an on-off button here that you can test it out before you leave. Sea Snake, which is a camera that we use when we look under decks. And then big neon posters are real huge to combat what's called inattentional blindness, meaning that most people, when they're marketing a lost pet, they're using an 8.5 by 11 white piece of paper that says lost dog, which nobody notices, let alone reads. So you have to do something to combat combat inattentional blindness, which the hypothesis is there is no perception without attention, meaning if you're not paying attention to something, it's as if it's not even there. You don't perceive it, so it's invisible. So if you're driving your car and you're talking on the cell phone, or you're having a conversation with someone, the only thing that's going to capture your attention is some idiot on the street corner with a big neon Lost Chihuahua sign, you know? So, so I'm going to talk just I'm going to wrap up here with the forensics. We've actually used a forensic anthropologist to analyze a bone before on a case. This was an adult femur feline bone, so that was found on a case of ours with chocolate tufts of fur. We were looking for a chocolate Himalayan. This one here, we actually, since I've moved up here, I tried to make a connection with a forensic anthropologist here, and they never contacted me back. So we're assuming that this was a cat skull, but we don't know. I think we still have these, and it would be nice to have them analyzed. So if anybody has a connection with forensic anthropologists that you could see me afterwards, that would be great. High probability evidence, I already talked a little bit about that. This is just an example of when you're looking into the sun, you're able to see these just little tufts of fur. This was on the fence where my cat, when I used to have an outdoor cat, Yogi, would go in and out of the fence and deposit the hair fibers. This was another case here that it was confirmed this is where the cat was going under. This is on another case where you could see the point under this fence where the hair was just accumulating. So again, when we're looking for cats, we look for that evidence. We've used DNA tests on 2 different cases. We could have used it on a lot of other cases, but it's very expensive. Dog intestines on the right was a case in Auburn, definitely a predator kill. On the left, it was we used the whisker that was shed from, that was a control sample from the cat's home. And then we found bloody tufts of fur out in the woods that the owner didn't want to believe was her cat, but the DNA matched and confirmed that it was. This is a case that I worked up in Gig Harbor, an example of the pattern of when we find a predator kill. And you can tell what happened. There's no fur in the center here, so that's where the body would have laid. And then when the coyote is removing the fur, so oftentimes what we're finding is patterns like that or different clumps. We use luminol also on cases. Yeah, there's been times when we've come across some tufts of fur and not many. You know, this to me is an obvious kill site, but there's other times when it's just a couple tufts and you're thinking, well, was somebody grooming their dog in the park, or is this, you know, or was it a cat fight, or is this the actual predator kill? So we've come back before and then sprayed luminol, and if it luminesces blue, then we know that there was blood in the ground. We've also used blood stain analysis test kits. These are made and used on homicides, but we use them if we find a suspicious stain on the ground that we want. We have one test that will tell us if it's blood, then another test that will tell us whether it's human blood or animal blood. So I'm going to wrap up with a test. So I'm going to ask you, okay, some of you are all done eating, right? I was debating on whether I show these or not. I'm like, oh, come on, they're writing about murder, right?
We've seen worse.
I was going to say, you better be on the stomach. So this is a typical scat, or poop, maybe not typical, but this was actually one of our dogs found this on a case. So it's actually a close-up shot, so you can't see it too well. But if somebody can dim the lights, excuse me, could you dim the lights there? Yeah, sure. I want to give you guys a chance to.
Do you want them all the way off? Or?
Yeah, just for yeah. So I want you to look in this, and there's one particular piece of evidence here that this was a missing cat case that solved the case, or that just made us know what we were looking at. I want to see if anybody can see it.
Cat's paw?
Yeah. Can everybody see it?
What? The what?
Right there. Oh. I have a better picture of it right there. I parted everything apart from it. When we saw that, then we knew that the cat that we're looking for. The other, I'm not sure where that's teeth. Well, that's an obvious bone there. The other chips of bone there and there. I think that one of those I thought was a tooth.